Hello to everyone in the United States, Israel, Palestine, and other places throughout the world. Welcome to this latest installment of Conversations with Israel and Palestine, hosted by Partners for Progressive Israel. Conversations with Israel and Palestine is a series of informational webinars that bring voices from Israel and Palestine to an American audience, providing an important link between progressives in the US and in the Middle East. My name is Leonard Grob, and I'm a Vice President of Partners for Progressive Israel. And before I hand it over to today's discussion moderator, let me note that Partners for Progressive Israel is an American not-for-profit 501c3 organization dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors, and believes in the need to ensure civil rights, equality, and social justice for all of Israel's inhabitants. Partners seeks to deepen Americans' understanding of Israel's complexities so that they can better advocate for a progressive Israeli future. Right now, Partners for Progressive Israel's main focus is preventing Israel's unilateral annexation of occupied territory. And we invite everyone to visit the Stop Annexation Now page on our website for information and upcoming programming. Also, we are in the midst of our Stop Annexation Now Matching Grant Challenge. Every contribution is matched dollar for dollar. Now let me introduce our moderator, Dr. Anwar Mhajne. She is Assistant Professor at Stonehill College. She's a political scientist specializing in international relations and comparative politics with a focus on gender and politics. Her current research is at the intersection of gender, religion, and Middle East politics. Take it away, Anwar.
Thank you so much. As Professor Grob just mentioned, I'll be the discussion moderator for the next 60 minutes. The way we will divide it, for the first 40 minutes, I'll be asking the panelists questions, and then the last 20 minutes, it will be open for Q&A. For the Q&A, just remember that your mic and video is off, and the way to ask the questions is to use the Q&A function on Zoom. So if you move the mouse on your screen and you see there the Q&A icon, you click on there and then you can start typing your question. It's important to note that you can ask the question at any time during the panel, and then I'll ask the question on your behalf towards the end of the discussion. And then just know that the Q&A, just typing the Q&A is not gonna disturb or disrupt the webinar or make it go away. So you're gonna still be able to see us, still be able to engage in the conversation without disrupting the conversation. So next, I'm gonna move to introduce our two panelists. We have two great panelists with us today with great expertise. And thank you for being with us, Dr. Thabet Abu Ras, and then Hadil Alsana. She's a doctor, but you know, that what my dad would call the real doctor, somebody who works in a hospital. I'm gonna start with introducing Dr. Thabet Abu Ras. He joined the Abraham Initiative in April 2014. He has a rich background in civil society organizations. Thabet is a political geographer and an expert in land and planning. He obtained his PhD in the field of geography and regional development from the United States, specifically from the University of Arizona. He's been teaching courses at Ben Gurion University, Sapir College. He has been involved with Adala and other organizations. So he has a rich background in civil society and engagement with the Arab community in Israel, or the Palestinian community in Israel. Next, I'm going to move to Hadil Alsana. She's an MD, was born and raised in a Bedouin village called Lakia, which I had the privilege of visiting a while back when I went to Ben Gurion University. Hadil, from a young age, volunteered with Women Lakia organization, where she taught women how to read and write. She now is working at Soroka Medical Hospital. She got her degree from Hungary in 2016. By 2017, that's when you started your internship at Soroka Hospital. But she also has been working with the Arab Medical Association in the Negev on raising awareness in the Bedouin community about COVID-19, advocating for the provision of testing, isolation center, and the establishment of medical clinics. I'm going to leave it here. You both have a rich bio. You have rich bios that I can't cover just now. If you think that I missed something that you want to mention and you think it's important, please feel free to add or just let us know. So I'm going to get us started, and the way I wanted to get it started is by maybe just providing, asking you to provide a background on the Israeli Arab community or the Palestinian Israeli community, of the Palestinian community in Israel, right? There are different ways of describing the community, and maybe you guys can touch on that. So I was thinking that Thabet, you would start with giving us a general picture on the Arab community in Israel, the Palestinian community in Israel, and then Hadil, you can talk more specifically about the Bedouin community that you are working with right now. Thabet, you're muted.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Anwar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, for the emotional space that you are giving us to talk about our reality. We are the Palestinian citizens of State of Israel, are living between the rock of the corona, I would say, and the hardy place of the annexation plan and its implication. Well, the Arab community in Israel consists of 18% of the total citizen of the State of Israel. In terms of geographical distribution, the overwhelming majority of the Arabs living in the north, in Galilee, and the Haifa district. I would say the second cluster of Arabs living in the center, the so-called Little Triangle area and the center area of Israel. And the third part, around 17% of the total population live in the Negev area, the Bedouin of the Negev, and still 10% of the total population live in the mixed cities, living side by side with Jewish people. And lately we see a move in the Arab middle class who are moving to live in the mixed cities. In terms of religious affiliation, 80 to 81% of the total Arab citizens are Muslims, around 9% are Christians, and 10% Druze. All we are making the Arab minority inside Israel. This is in large, we are facing a lot of challenges right now. I can say that the major challenge now, the acceleration and escalation in crime and violence in the Arab community. And we still facing discrimination and being second-class citizen, especially lately. And I would like to elaborate on this issue and to connect it to the corona whenever I have the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Anwar, and thank you, Partners for Progressive Israel, again, for the opportunity. I think it's really important to have this kind of talks, especially for people that are not familiar with our reality. I think after even 60 minutes of talk, people will still be confused, and that's okay. It's very confusing. I encourage you all to come and visit in the future when this coronavirus pandemics will hopefully be behind us. So if I talk about the Bedouin community, the Palestinian Bedouin citizens in Israel, as Dr. Thabet said, the Arabs citizens, there are 20% of the citizens in Israel. 10% of them, which basically 278,000 are Bedouin. Almost 50% of them, there's a big debate always about the numbers and the percentage, but almost 50% of them, they live in the unrecognized villages. I don't know if you're familiar with the term of unrecognized villages, but to live in these villages, it means that there is no water, no roads, no connection to electricity, no sewage system or garbage removal. Also minimal schools, minimal healthcare accesses, and one of the biggest tragedies, continued home demolitions with no plans or hope for approval or building permits. So it was very obvious that in this kind of living reality, that they lack the basic infrastructures in the unrecognized villages and also in the urbanized town. There's some that are recognized already from the 80s, mid-90s, and some that are recently been recognized. If I say numbers, is originally 45 unrecognized villages. Of them, almost in the mid-2005, 11 were recognized, but a decade later, there's no difference between this newly recognized and the unrecognized. So unsurprisingly, with lacking the basic infrastructures, we know now, and we always fear that if the pandemic hits in the Negev, it could be a huge catastrophe. I think we will talk about it more, and I would like to also talk more about what it means that there's no healthcare access in the unrecognized villages in the Negev. Should I do it now, Anwar, or we?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what I was thinking about to do next is to ask you about Israel's response to the pandemic in general, and then the response to it in the Arab community and the Bedouin, like in general, and then the Bedouin community in particular. So you guys can take it from here.
Well, maybe I will just give the larger picture and remind all of us that the pandemic is global and crossing borders doesn't differentiate really between gender, colors, or nationality, between Palestinian and Israeli. We are all under the same pandemic regime. Yet it's severely hit the low-income people, the poor people. The Israeli Center Bureau of Statistics shows that over 50% of the Palestinian families inside Israel under the poverty line. But due to the strict behavior during the Corona crisis so far, I can just let you know that only 7.5% of the total infected citizens in Israel and 5 out of 299 people who did are Arabs. So we did fine. We did really, comparing to other communities, we did fine. Okay, yet the Arab community is, I would say, more vulnerable than the Jewish community at large, due to several reasons. One, I would like to mention just few reasons of vulnerability. The fact that Arabs have unstable employment. Largely, the Arab workers largely occupied the, I will say, lower ranking jobs, and they were the first to be fired. We saw that late in the last few months, and their share in the unemployment rate is very high nowadays. I believe other reasons for the vulnerability, the low level of emergency preparedness. We are not prepared. There is a lack of experience in the logistic and the crisis management in the Arab towns. The majority of the previous national emergencies have been in the context of war with Lebanon, war with Gaza, and the Arab society has been excluded from crisis management planning. I can add the fact that there is a lack of trust in the government, weakness of local Arab government themselves. So I can say that we are really more vulnerable. And I would like to add that the coronavirus reached us 2 to 3 weeks later than reached the Jewish community. This is due to late testing in the Arab community, around 2 to 3 months. But so far, Arab society did succeed in combating a coronavirus with low percentage of infected of the total infected people in Israel. However, I can here just emphasize that we are actually facing a real challenge of high percentage of crime and violence. We mentioned the number of 5 dead people in the result as a result of Corona, just to compare it in the same period of time with the Corona, we're already in our society, in the same period, 22 were killed. Were killed in internal, I would call it internal killing. So violence and the crime, it's became as an immediate threat for the Arab community. I believe that the Arab community did emerge stronger from the 3 rounds of election. I would like to try to explain why Arabs did good job in this crisis. I believe that the Arabs really emerged from the 3 rounds of election and with better results. They have the feeling we are the Arabs, we are unified, we are stronger citizen. We can do better job in all levels. They felt they are equal to the Jewish citizens, equal in the threat. We are all under the same threat, and they are equal in political influence. We don't have a lot of opportunities to feel that we are equal to the Jews. In the election, exact election day, everybody has its own personal vote. So the election day reminds us that we have the same single vote. So with this feeling, I believe that this helped the Arabs to even to react to the coronavirus. So with the outbreak of the epidemic, the Arab community took immediate responsibility. The Arab community didn't wait for the state and its agencies to come and to do something. As I mentioned, the epidemic just reached us 2-3 weeks later. So we didn't wait to the institution and state institution, mainly, basically the health ministry, the Arab follow-up committee, the umbrella organization of all Arab political parties, NGOs, and you name it, and Arab mayors. They established their own local committees to try to combat, try to raise awareness, especially to raise awareness among people. And they just called for closing the mosques and preventing and halting social gathering and so forth. And really it's helped. We didn't, and they issued a lot of leaflets in Arabic language even before the health ministry. Now, I would like to mention here that despite the late involvement of health ministry and the police, and who have to impose the regulation, and the front command, it's the emergency units of the military. They did a good job, including trying to even win the trust of Arab citizens. I would like to mention the front command especially. But still there are issues of concern that I would like to talk with them in the coming round. I will stop here.
Thank you, Thabet. My mic was muted. So just I want to reiterate the fact that you guys can ask any questions you want at any time. Just go to the Q&A and type your questions there. I think now we would like to hear from you, Hadil, because now you're working with the Bedouin community. If you could give us more of a background on what's happening there, and also access to health insurance as well, and healthcare as well over there in the community.
So if we talk, okay, I'm not muted. So if we talk about the approach of Israel to the COVID-19 pandemic, look, well, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Health and Internal Security and Defense are approached and still approaching effort to stop the spread of the virus in Jewish localities as if preparing for war. Again, and unfortunately, they have abandoned the Arab town and villages. And it comes in many levels. If it comes from spreading information, important information about the pandemic and how to take caution from it, and also from testing. Again, I think we'll go into details about it later. But what is very important to understand that you cannot expect something that is broken to start all of the sudden work on the time of crisis. And that's the case with healthcare in the Negev and in the Naqab, and that's the case also in the unrecognized villages. So to understand the size of the tragedy and the situation now in the time of the pandemic, and how, if it's not now, how it can potentially affect the Naqab, it's also important to understand the situation before. So if we talk in numbers, in only, as we said originally, 45 unrecognized villages, now the number is 34 unrecognized villages. But out of all these unrecognized villages and the newly recognized, there's only 12 healthcare clinics, only 12 in all of them. And that means that almost 80% of these people need to walk on average of 2.5 hours for the nearest clinic. Now they need to walk because there's no roads, no infrastructure for public transportation. And that's mostly important in the case of women. There was a work that was done in 2016, and they showed that 4 out of 5 women cannot reach the clinic or child mother clinic when they need it. 4 out of 5. That's crazy. And it is because mostly the women, they rely on men to transport them, to use the car, to take them from the village to the nearest clinic. And as I said, usually they don't have a clinic in the town itself. Now, one of the more valuable parameters to evaluate the health status of a community is to look at the infant mortality rate. And among Bedouin, the number approaches 10 out of 1,000 live birth, which is 5 times more than the number in the Jewish Israeli community, which is 2.2. That's also a crazy number. The infant mortality rate among the Bedouin children is 5 times more than among the Jewish babies that are being born. Now, one of the most common causes for infant mortality is congenital malformation, which is it's a result of inside or sibling marriage, which is a part of the Muslim culture, but it can all be prevented by appropriate prenatal care. And it was also shown that the lack of accessible health care means it also affects their access to this prenatal care. The frequency of pregnancy checks in the unrecognized villages, mostly they do it in the 2nd trimester. While in the recognized towns, we saw that but a high percentage of the women, they do reach out to the prenatal care in the critical 1st trimester. And that is critical to pre-diagnose if there's a congenital malformation and to do a planned miscarriage if it's needed. So again, the lack of the healthcare access affects also the number on the infant mortality, but obviously other factors. Other factors like the lack of adequate and clean water supplies. Usually the people in the unrecognized villages, they kind of need to take care of themselves and make this unsupervised water system, so that makes them also prone to accumulation of a lot of toxic chemicals and also a lot of infections. They don't have electricity if they need to store their medications. If you need to be mechanically ventilated and you want to be in your house, if you're from an unrecognized village, it's not even an option for you. They don't have waste management infrastructures. And one of the subjects that is very close to my heart, because part of my work, I work in the emergency department, they don't have access to ambulances and emergency care. So that means that a lot of times the family are asked to bring their family members midway to meet the ambulances. And this way they can lose valuable time. So this absence of basic health and access and basic infrastructure, they put them in danger even before the coronavirus era. But now when we in the middle of the pandemics, you cannot expect to this whole system to start work and protect the Bedouin community if a pandemic hits. And this is why we all the time kind of fear that there is this, I could say, cloud of horror that is kind of waving above the head of the Bedouin community, especially those that are from the unrecognized villages. the crisis is there. It's just now the pandemic is revealing a reality that goes, I think, unnoticed in normal times. I think it's also an eye-opener that when it comes to healthcare access, it cannot keep being this way. If we've always focused about the home demolition cases, we also need to focus our attention to the fact that they need to have appropriate healthcare access. Now, if we talk about the coronavirus pandemic and how it affects, I think the Arab citizens in general, and I will talk also about the Bedouin community, because this is, again, most of my work and my volunteer is among the Bedouin community. One of the first actions to implement from the Health of Ministry was the idea of social distancing. And that's as in to protect us from the coronavirus spreading from one person to another. And that required a widespread media campaign and nonstop media coverage to encourage this idea and the idea of quarantine. It was especially challenging in our community because part of our culture, we put very higher value for closeness and family gatherings. Now, while the health minister published already loads of material, that in Hebrew, already in the end of January, it unfortunately didn't publish any material that was in Arabic until March. And that happened only after many NGOs and members of the Knesset, they put a lot of pressure on them as in to also spread material to the Arab community. 20% of the Arab citizens, they didn't have any information about the pandemic that was going on. It later did catch on, but I must say it was late and it was too little. And unfortunately, it was not culturally appropriate. As we can see, as we can talk later, a lot of the times the gap that was created, it was filled by many NGOs. One of them is the Arab Medical Association in the Negev, the one that I volunteer and the board member in it. We mostly worked on public awareness campaigns with the very minimal funds that we have. And one of our main goal was to have it and make it culturally appropriate for the Bedouins and for the Arab community in the Naqab. But it was also a shared effort of many other NGOs. Now, if we talk about information, it was also not reachable for everyone because they also, a lot of places in the unrecognized villages, they lack internet infrastructures, and a lot of times it wasn't enough. So that's also, that was also part of the problem. That's about the spreading the information. Another point that I think Dr. Thabet, he mentioned, that was very, it was for me very painful, to be honest, because as a physician in the hospital, we're kind of in the front line, we're fighting the spread of the virus and treating the patients without discriminating between Jewish and Arabs. And the virus itself is also not racist. It does not differentiate between Jewish and Arabs, but it was for me very frustrating and depressing seeing that my community was pushed to the bottom of the list when it comes to the preparedness that the government would implement in the general society. So there was lacking or late, or I would say at the beginning, if I'll explain it. I think it's important to explain to understand how it worked. Testing, when it started at the beginning, testing for to diagnose if they were sick or carrying the coronavirus, at the beginning, it was under the control, under the, of the Magen David Adom, the ambulances in Israel, which was also supervised by the health ministry. That means that you would call the ambulance, you would ask to be tested, and the ambulance would come to you and do the test. Now, problem is, many problems, but one of them, there was not an Arabic copy of the questionnaire. This is one. And the second one, as I said, the unrecognized villages don't have roads. So how would the ambulance would go inside? So if you're from the unrecognized villages, that basically means that you cannot be tested. Later, I think it was in the middle of March, they built some drive-in points, as in for people to go and get tested. But these points were not built in any of the Arab citizens, not in the north, not in the Jerusalem, and not in the Naqab. It was only 2 weeks later that they built the first drive-in point in Rahat. And again, it was only after the pressure that was put because of many leaders and of the NGOs and the members of the Knesset. And again, I always go back to talk about what was prior to the era of the Corona. Even in our campaign of awareness, it was very frustrating. I would say, for example, the idea of quarantine. I mean, how could I say to people that live in a 50 meters apartment, 10 or 8 to 10 members of family to be in a quarantine and to give like one room to a family if they cannot do it, or to maintain hygiene if they don't have running water? And again, how can we encourage them to be tested when it's not even reachable to them? The ambulances cannot go inside, and also the testing points were not close to them. It was in Rahat, and only later they built few other points. They were not working every day in the week, and again, not in the unrecognized villages until later on.
Thank you, Hadil. That was very detailed and informative. Thabet, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about maybe the nation-state law and access to information in Arabic. Do you think there's a relationship between what happened, you know, the nation-state law, and because one of the elements was to downgrade Arabic to a language with special status, but not like a national language. So I don't know if you could talk about that. And then maybe also, you know, we hear a lot about how we hear a lot from right-wing Israeli Knesset members how Arab MKs are not serving their communities, they're not really addressing important issues. What do you think, how do you think that applies to what's happening now? Because as Hadil said, MKs pushed for a lot of, you know, pushed for more work in the Arab community when it comes to COVID-19.
Yeah, well, I would like just to add a few more things about the issues of major concern of the Arab community regarding the crisis of Corona crisis. I would just to mention that, well, we have to think about post-Corona. I don't know if it's going to be post, hopefully, post-Corona period. We see that in Israel, partially they are returning to routine. And the issue of employment, the issue of Arab workers, unfortunately, are not high-tech workers. I would say the overwhelming majority, 80% of the Arab workers are blue-collar industrial and service workers. And we see that, we just start to see that Arabs are paying higher price in terms of employment. Also, the issue of lack of credit and banking services in the Arab community, it is actually limited and sometimes non-exist at all. The black market in the Arab community is major concern. It's thriving nowadays. It's already thriving, and the police are not giving a real answer to this issue. I'm happy that Hadil just emphasized access to health care, especially in the Negev. However, I would like here to raise the flag regarding other issue. Well, there are no banks or in the Bedouin community except in Rahat. Can you imagine 280,000 people, around 280,000 people living without actually credit or banking access and so forth? We have 2 branches of banks in Rahat, and that's it. The rest of the Bedouins, the overwhelming majority of the Bedouin left without this service, important service. There is a need of a quick response, financial relief, loans, grants, and deferring payments also needed. So the situation in the Arabic community is a little bit different. Now, the issue of nation-state law and the bigger than that, the issue of annexation of the Palestinian territories is not acceptable among Palestinian, both sides of the Green Line. Actually, the climax of the nation-state law for us, it's the annexation, which is gonna hit us. It's not only legal move according to the international law, and but the issue of annexation is going to hit the Arab community inside Israel, is going to affect us and affect Arab-Jewish relation in Israel. Following the nation-state law from 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we saw there is kind of expanding the Jewish values, Judaization of the state of Israel on the expense of the democratic values of the state of Israel. Yes, we had a lot of good results in the Knesset with 15 MKs. This means that really Arab community, Arab citizen giving a trust of their representatives, that good representatives. Yes, we still are in the opposition. The return of our work, parliamentary work in the opposition is always going to be less than being in coalition. We excluded from any partnership, political partnership. We believe Arab community in Israel would like to be engaged, to be in all levels, not only in the hospitals. We still 20% of the total employee in the Israeli hospitals. We don't have this figure in any other institution, Israel's national institution. It's neither in the education ministry nor in the, you name it, okay? So we would like to be in every single space. However, there are a lot of obstacles to be engaged, especially in the politics. We are saying that it's not enough to support Arab local governments and to think about economic development. We think political engagement, we think political influence is very important. We would like to be in the media, we would like to be more in the universities, not only as students, okay? As a lecturer, as a professors, okay? And to be part really of the Israeli society and to contribute our share. We are doing better job now in terms of contributing to the Israeli GDP since we are working more, but still there is a lot of gaps in every single way of single realm in the state of Israel. All in all, I would like to see that the deal of the century promotes the concept of land swap. I am from the Little Triangle. I'm from the town of Kalansawa. Land swap cannot be a tool for peace building. The plan includes a specific mention of the Little Triangle. Well, it's very important to know what we are talking about. We are talking about 300,000 Arab Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel. And there is a potential, according to the deal of the century, to redraw, to curve the border in certain way with to be part of some other political entity, the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian state, without asking us. The Arab citizens of Israel are not subjects, okay? They cannot be passed from one hand to another hand, and their citizenship is unconditional. We strongly reject the notion of revoking our citizenship. Just imagine, you can imagine seeing the name of your city where being directly mentioned in a plan that doesn't ask for your opinion. Imagine Tijuana, okay, of California. Imagine San Paulo of Texas, that curving the border and tomorrow will be part of Mexico. Well, I believe that this can happen only in totalitarian and dictatorship regimes and states, and we reject that. We really see that our life, for us, it's a homeland. First of all, this is my homeland. This is my homeland where I live, okay, in Kalansawa, okay? And I am part of Israeli society. I contributed a lot. My life, it's not only in Kalansawa, in the Little Triangle. I am part of the Negev, for example. 40 years of my life in the Negev, I'm still teaching in Ben Gurion University. I have good friends and I am working from Lud. So we contributed to build this state. We are part of the state, but also we have to mention we are part of the Palestinian people, okay? This duality is good for us. We would like to keep this duality, being Palestinians as in terms of nationality and being Israelis as citizenship. And we have nothing to lose. I believe that peace between our country and our people, the Palestinians, is going to be the best for us to see our country and our people living in peace, and it's possible. Unfortunately, Netanyahu's government is trying to destroy the dreams of Palestinians of establishing their own state, their own independent and sovereign state with this annexation. Hopefully will not happen, and we are calling you to raise your voice against such an annexation. We have to give hope for the Israelis and for the Palestinians that we still can live in one homeland, yes, in one homeland, and in two independent and sovereign states, Israel and Palestine.
Thank you, Thabet. I just want to remind the participants that you can type your question in the Q&A. I see the questions in the chat, but it's better if you type it in the Q&A because I can answer the questions live. So again, there's the chat function at the bottom, and then there's the Q&A icon, and that's where you type your question. So we're close to our time to go answer the questions from people. If we're ready, I have more questions to ask you. So if you don't mind, if there's nothing urgent that you guys want to add, I'm going to move on to the Q&A segment of the webinar. Is that okay with you, Hadil and Thabet?
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay.
So thank you for those who have already typed in their questions. As a reminder, if you are watching this webinar and have a question, you can type it in to us. Simply look at the bottom of your monitor for the icon that reads Q&A. If you don't see it, just move your mouse around the screen and then it will show at the bottom. Your microphone and videos are turned off. You can't turn them on. So I saw somebody who raised their hand. Unfortunately, I have two people who raised their hands. Unfortunately, we can't enable your video or microphone. It's easier for us if you type it in the Q&A. So I'm going to start with the questions. I think I'm going to start with something that's simple, and I think it's important to talk about. I think, Thabet, you kind of started talking about the definition of Palestinian versus Arab. So I just made it live. Abigail said, isn't it important to call the people Palestinians rather than Arabs?
Well, this is how we see ourselves, how we define ourselves. If I am telling you that half of my family live right now in the refugee camps of Gaza, in Jabalia, and Khan Yunis, and Rafah, how are you going to define me? This area was Palestine until 1948, now became Israel. Well, I have dual citizenship, okay? Yes, I'm a Palestinian. This is my feeling. This is how I feel, okay? And, you know, I don't want to make a comparison with anybody else, but this is how I feel. We are Palestinians and Israelis in the same times. Israelis by citizenship and Palestinian by nationality. It's important for us. All the political parties are using this terminology of being Palestinian citizen of the State of Israel, and we see nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so another thing that is kind of related to this, it says it's confusing to hear that there can be a one-state coexistence while annexation is discouraged. How would you guys respond to that?
Adil, if you want, you just jump.
I think you can answer this question. It's
okay.
Go on.
Well, annexation is bad for the Israelis and the Palestinians. Annexation will eliminate the dream of the two-state solution that I believe in. Honestly, I believe in. I believe that we should upgrade the two-state solution with talking about the homeland as the whole territory. From my point of view, Jews can live everywhere, but also Palestinians can live everywhere in equal basis, okay? Well, we still can think about curving the border here and there, but in terms of self-determination, the two people, it's very important to guarantee that, and Palestinian people have to exercise, this is under the international law also, have that must exercise their right of self-determination and to establish their own independent and sovereign state. I don't believe that one state solution will solve the problem. Listen, we have to be fair and say, to be honest with you, if Israel really treat us as an Arab minority with only 18% of the total population, how Israel will, you know, as a Zionist regime, I will say, as a Jewish and Arab democratic state, I will say, how they are going to treat 50% of total population. Between the Jordanian River and the Mediterranean, we are half and half, okay? It's gonna be apartheid state, not less than that. I know it's tough for some Jewish people, especially, to hear the word apartheid. I really understand, but we are now in a process of a creeping apartheid. And somebody is working in the last 20 years to erase the green line and to build settlements on the green line, okay? And this strategy is not gonna work. I think my people, the Palestinian, deserve a self-determination, deserve a state, independent and sovereign state, just like the Israeli people.
Okay, so that's good. We have a lot of questions about annexation, and then other questions about, you know, how Israel has about 17% of the doctors in Israel are Arab, about 48% of pharmacists are Arabs, and a lot of people, I'm gonna put the answer live thing. So they're asking, how do you think that is affecting the perception of Arabs in the community? Like in Israel, is it making people more tolerant? Is it affecting the relationship between the two communities? Is it forcing people to acknowledge the importance of Arabs in this country?
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned before, I think when it comes to the Arabs themselves, the ones that work in the healthcare system, and in general that take part of the society itself, it doesn't have to be also only healthcare, doctors, nurses, and so on. I think now the focus is because of the pandemics, but we also have the lawyers, the social workers, the teachers, and so on, that all contribute to the society and in Israel. It was only, I think in general, we could say that in the time of the COVID-19, we kind of feel again abandoned. We kind of feel again that we're left behind. I think the fact that you feel like you've been given yourself, that you're working so much, you do not discriminate between the people. Again, I'm talking about my profession. But on the other side, you feel that your community is being left behind. That's painful. It's basically saying that I saw there was also a question if Bedouins are citizens in Israel. They are. They're being labeled illegal, part of them, but they are Bedouins. They're citizens of Israel. But still in the pandemics, they say to my community, to some of their community, maybe indirectly, that you don't have the same right to life. Now, the society itself, the Jewish society in Israel, the way they approach Arabs that work in the healthcare system, I think that they do give the respect. I think that they do talk about us as the heroes they do worldwide. I think there was many campaigns also among Jewish and in Israel that talked about this as in, we have the same fate, we work together, the hospital is this place that there's no discrimination, we work shoulder by shoulder, so why can't it be outside? Why can't we look at the Arab citizens as equal when it comes to everything? But still there's a big discrepancy about the way that they talk about the Arabs and a way things are. And for me, honestly, I don't want to be thought that I'm equal to and I deserve the right to basic human rights just because I do my job as a doctor, as a social worker, or as whatever. I want to have this right as being a human, and not because I contribute, look, I'm equal, look, I deserve this. I need to have this by my nature right. Okay.
Thabet, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, our contribution in combating the coronavirus is well known. We are talking about 17% of the total doctors. However, I can here guarantee you that based in Israeli information, Israeli media, people talk about 25% of the total staff in the hospitals are Arabs in the last 2-3 months, okay? 25% means not only doctors, even we are talking about normal workers, staff workers, okay? Service workers and others, not only doctors. We proud of that. We're proud of that we are shoulder to shoulder. We are combating the risk of coronavirus, okay? And I am happy that more and more Israelis realize the contribution of the Arab community in combating the coronavirus. However, I'm also proud that more and more Israelis are familiar now, aware of the contribution of the Arab in general, the Arab community in general right now, as a force of social and political change in Israel. Change in Israel to the positive, to the peace, for example, is not going to happen without the contribution of the Arab community. We are a political force more than ever. Actually, I can say that we wanted to influence, and in the end, the rift it's between Jews and Arabs, unfortunately. And Netanyahu succeeded to alienate us as a political force. But we learned a lot. Our issues, actually, it's more on the table now. Everybody's obviously known about it. You know, it's unprecedented to see Gantz and Netanyahu and Amir Peretz are campaigning in the Arab community. It's something new, okay? Something new. We know that the Knesset, it's by itself, it's not going to help all of our issues, okay? But at least our community now aware more to their rights and demanding the rights, equal and fair policing, for example, in combating violence, anti-crimes. The issue of land and the planning, we still have a lot of challenges to cope with. Unfortunately, the Netanyahu still inciting against us. We are open, we are knocking in the doors of the Israeli government. We want to be equal, regardless of the nation state law and other laws. We are a human being. We are bnei hurin in Hebrew. Okay, we are free people, just like anybody else. We are not going to give up in demanding equality as citizens in the state of Israel.
Thank you, Thabet. So following up on that, I think David is asking, so since there is, there's success in the Bedouin community and the Arab community with low cases of COVID-19, he's asking, do you see a future with greater level of Bedouin community leadership in your generation, Hadi? This question is for you, to get involved in advocating for better services?
Definitely. Now, about the cases, the number of cases of COVID-19 in the Bedouin community, unfortunately, we're kind of facing a mini outbreak in the Negev. I hope it won't get worse, but the cases are increasing, yes, mainly because partly we're going kind of back into normal life, and it happens after we had the Eid al-Fitr, which is one of our biggest holidays, and I really hope it will be contained, and it's another challenge that we need to face in the future. The coronavirus did some good things, I think. One of the things that happened in the Naqab, we had an emergency room in a village called Abu Tlul that many NGOs, big NGOs, including the Arab Medical Association, AJIC, and so on, were part of the emergency room. And it was also many smaller NGOs and many volunteers in the Naqab. And I think since then, we have this cooperation in many organizations that work together. When it was in the time of the COVID-19, I think everyone put their resources, their human resources, their funds, and all of them to the same goal, as to maintain a healthy Naqab and without many casualties and so on. It was on the level of having more centers for tests and also center for isolations, food deliveries, and so on. But also we kind of all the time talk about planning to continue this in the post-corona era, this this cooperation together. So I think the coronavirus did something good, that we kind of now see that we need to be united more, and in a way not wait all the time for the government and the different ministries to do well for the Naqab, because this might not come from there, but it might come from the people in the Naqab itself. There's many plans to do more now times and later. If it comes to healthcare, if it's obviously the unrecognized villages need to be recognized, but if it's not, maybe you have the mobile clinic and other temporary centers that to advocate better healthcare access, but more about education, about also economy, having better job opportunities, especially for women. But I think that's also, we start talking about it now in the Corona time, it will go on for later. So I'm looking to the future as well, and we can thank the Corona for it, I think.
So I have other questions. We have plenty of questions to answer. I think we're gonna go over time a little bit. We have some time for 2 questions, I think. So one of the questions is, do Arab municipalities receive the same funding as other municipalities, you know, as Jewish municipalities from the government? And if not, has that been addressed by the Israeli Supreme Court?
Well, and I mentioned that Arab politicians, the joint list is not part of any coalition, and you cannot really influence that much. And the discrepancy and the gap between what Arabs are getting and the Jewish municipalities are getting, there is a real gap. And the Arab mayors, actually the municipalities went to strike last month, and they demanded equality in the so-called compensation in tax revenues, okay? Can you imagine that the Arabs got only 2% of the total amount of compensation, okay? And all the Arab community got the exact amount that the municipality of Eilat, southern city of Eilat got. This is the same amount, okay? 47 million shekels, amazing. Well, following the strike and a lot of political pressure on the Minister of Interior, they increased the figure by 25 million shekels. It's not enough. It's not enough. All in all, I can say that the Israeli government didn't pour money as Trump did in your country, in the United States, but still Arabs are getting less than Jews. They are discriminated against in this issue also. So, but we have to try to work together, Jews and Arabs. And we are the joint list are trying to reach out now to talk with some people. Honestly, still there is some good connection with Gantz and the blue-white party that's part of the government. And there are some cooperation. The election is over. We have to work together for getting more resources, allocating more money to Arab community. After all, we are part of the Israeli society, we are part of the Israeli government, and we are entitled to equality and the same money or allocation of money.
Thank you. So the other question is from Colin. He's asking, do you think it's possible for Palestinian and Jewish politicians to form a new social democratic political party standing for social justice and two-state solution? If yes, what are the hurdles to creating this party to challenge the right-wing force in Israel?
Well, I can say that this project is underway. It's underway, it's gonna happen, and I believe the question when, okay? Well, there are, after the collapse of the left in Israel, and there is a collapse, real collapse, I believe that the demonstration on Saturday in Tel Aviv, it's just the first spark for possible cooperation between Jews and Arabs. There is a lot of cooperation. So many people believe in that. Ayman Audi, the leader of the joint list, worked hard to convince Arabs, not only Jews, to go in this direction. And there is, you know, we saw that during the last 3 rounds of election, the flexibility of the Arab politicians when they really nominated Gantz as the prime minister, you remember that, okay? Even Balad, which is the most radical party really nominated Gantz as a prime minister. Yes, Arab and large, they are knocking in the doors of the Israeli society. Hey guys, listen to us. But we are not going to compromise. We are demanding equality. Let's do it together. As Ayman Audi said, you cannot make the social and political change without us, and we cannot do it by ourselves too. So let's cooperate. And I believe there is a lot of discussions. I am engaged in different groups in this issue, and I believe this is the right thing to do.
Hadil, do you have anything to add?
I agree with Dr. Thabet. I think we need to, I think in the current situation, when there is continuously year after year, the right extremists in Israel, they are the head of the ministry in Israel, the Benjamin Netanyahu, and his party, the Likud. It requires us to kind of unite, and I think this is what we should do. This is kind of like the natural way to do it. It's required of us to do it. A party that is of Arabs and Jews together with the same agenda. I think, as Dr. Thabet say, we kind of we're approaching to that point, and I think for everyone, Arabs and Jewish in this country, it's I think it comes sooner than later.
And then I think one of the questions, Thabet, you kind of started touching on it, is how do the current worldwide anti-racism protests, you know, the ones that were sparked by the murder of George Floyd in the US, affect the Palestinian-Jewish relations? I know you mentioned the Tel Aviv protests. There were talks about the presence of the Palestinian flag and all of that. So how do you think is that going to shape a relationship between Palestinian and the Jewish community?
Well, no doubt there are some similarities between what's going on in the United States and in terms of the protest. We both believe that we are suffering from the extra policing. I will say what we saw with George Floyd, we saw that with Iyad Halak of East Jerusalem. If they are talking about racism, we can see that racism in both cases, okay? And we are suffering here with the security component of the policing, okay? Of Israeli policing. Yes, I have to admit that some of our young people got inspired of what's going on in some of the American cities, but we didn't reach the point where to destroy and damage and try to be, I don't like the word thugs, no doubt. This is not thugs. There are the overwhelming majority of the demonstration in the United States are peaceful, and there is very small people who are trying to destroy things. All in all, I can say, yes, it's inspiring, but we have to know that there are differences also between the two cases. All in all, we have to think about that no one can continue living racism and discrimination, and all of us, we have to fight against racism and discrimination in the globe. It's not only in Israel or the United States, in Arab countries and other places too.
Thank you, Thabet. So we're getting to the end of this webinar. I'm going to give you each like a minute or two to give closing remarks. So whoever wants to start, you guys can go ahead.
Okay, if Hadil, you want to go?
I'll go after you, go on.
Okay, all in all, we are talking about coronavirus and annexation and the nation state law. It seems that everything is here dark. No, I would like just to let you know that when we see our new generation, when we see Hadil as a model to our young people, we are optimistic. When I see today 51,000 students, Arab students studying in Israeli campuses, Israeli colleges and universities, I am an optimistic person. I know if we add to that around 20,000 Arab students living everywhere, in the Palestinian Authority, in Eastern Europe, in the United States, I am really and optimistic. And when I see more Arabs are working and contributing to the Israeli GDP, things are moving in the right direction. The situation of the Arab community today is better than 1 decade ago, regardless, without passing over the real challenges, the real problems, the crime and violence within the Arab community, the issue of land and the planning, that crisis that we live in. But I really optimistic. I see that we are doing better job, okay? I see that we are doing better job in terms of Jewish-Arab relations. My hope to see that the Jewish community, it's not escaping from us further to the right, okay? I think there we can live in peace, we can live in equality, we can think about shared society and share the future if we know how to respect each other and to accept each other in the state of Israel in equal foot.
I think, as I said before, and I'll say it again, I think the COVID-19 was the pandemic was an eye-opener for about a lot of aspects in our life here in the Negev and Arabs in Israel and the Palestinians in general in Israel and in Palestine. We need to look at the future. We, as I said, we need to build a plan as also for the future. I think the change will be not only from the government, it's not through politics. I think the change is from us. Everyone, also you from abroad, you can bring change. And again, I encourage every and each one of you to come and visit, because we can talk till tomorrow and you cannot get the picture until you come and visit. So I encourage you all to do it. And thank you very much. I think the fact that you're here and you're listening and you're asking questions, that means that you care. And we should have more people that are caring and they want to know more about the situation. And thank you all.
I'm gonna hand in the torch to Lenny.
Thank you, Anwar. And thanks to everyone for joining us for this conversation with Israel and Palestine. I want to thank our moderator, Dr. Anwar Mhajne, and panelists Dr. Thabet Abu Ras and Dr. Hadil Alsana. Also, thank you to the staff of Partners for Progressive Israel for their work in making this discussion happen. You can go to progressiveisrael.org to learn more about Partners for Progressive Israel, about our future programs, our ongoing Stop Annexation Now campaign, and please contribute to our matching grant challenge. Every dollar you give is worth two. Thanks to everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Lenny. Thank you, Anwar. Thank you, Hadil. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.